Hey everybody, so I got my sister here. So welcome to Artist Talk.
Thank you.
My
Artist
girl.
Talk in person.
Yes. So I think I mentioned the last time Kim was on, and Kimberly is one of my dearest and best friends. She was one of my first friends in New York.
Yes. Thank you, Ron Hutchins.
Yes, Ron Hutchins. Yes. One of my first friends in New York. She was in our wedding.
Yeah.
We have shared some of the highest highs and the lowest lows together. And we are still friends after all these years. So that is a blessing.
Amen.
But she is here because not only is she one of my dearest friends, she is a beautiful artist. She's a beautiful singer. She's a Juilliard grad. She is a businesswoman, and she is an actor and a manager and all of that. So she's here to talk about those things. How do you diversify as an actor and do all the things that you need to do to create an income that you can be comfortable with? Kimberly, for as long as I've known her, she has had her hands in all kinds of cans and pots, and she has made it all work. So I'm excited for her to share those things with you. But Kimberly has always had an entrepreneurial spirit. Where did that come from?
Oh, my mom. Yeah, my mom. She's always been the kind of person where she knew, I think she always knew she was destined to be super successful. And she is. But she didn't find her niche that made her super successful until I think my mom was in her, I think, early 60s.
Wow.
Yeah. I think like either late 50s or early 60s, so she was always trying different things. I mean, whether it was investing, in stocks or investing in gold, or, she was selling, cosmetics, for a company that was, a competitor for Mary Kay Cosmetics. And, she won the Cadillac in the company, and all that kind of stuff. She was a district marketing director, for that. And then, she left there and, started working in advertisement and with Bell South at the time, which is now, AT&T. And, then when she didn't, when she was sick of that and knew that wasn't her calling, then she went into, care providing for the mentally and physically challenged. And then that led her into creating her company because she knew that she could help the care providers do better than what she was, the support that she was getting. And she's like, I think I can do better, help people do it, be supported better, and help those that are mentally and physically challenged be supported better. And she started her company in the living room of her home. And, by the time she sold the company, they had I think it was 5 locations, and she had like over 200 employees. And she did well, has done well. She continues to do well.
Yeah, that's a great example for, trying new things and continuing and continuing and continuing.
Yeah, never stop learning.
Never stop learning.
Yeah, or being afraid to try something new.
Wow. Thank you, Mama.
Yeah, thanks,
we
Mom.
love you. We love you. The things, though, that I have noticed that you've tried as an actor and a singer, you've stepped way out the box. Like, actors and singers, they do day jobs that sort of involve creativity, artistry. You've done real estate. So what made you get into real estate?
Again, family. My great grandmother, not great grandmother. She owned multifamily properties in Philadelphia. And my mom, one of the things that she was trying was, rehabbing homes. And I mean, she did them huge. Like if she liked a house, but it was in the wrong neighborhood, she had the house picked up and moved, from one neighborhood to a different, better neighborhood, and then refurbished the house on the inside and then turned it over and sold it. And I just remember being a kid, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so huge. How are we going to get this house over the electric poles, that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and I was like, just, it was huge, and then after, as an adult, I was like, oh my God, you had to get permits, you had to get the moving companies, you had to get, there's a lot of logistics, to get that done, to actually move a house from one neighborhood to another. So, my mom had done that, and so I also knew that, I just wanted to be able to have passive income. And the way to do that was to have money coming in when I was doing something else, acting.
So how important is it for actors to have other streams of income?
I think it's very important because I went to a financial advisement class that was being given by Actors Fund. And then the name of the class was how to manage your budget on fluctuating income. And I was like, perfect. That's what we are as actors. And it's the Actors Fund who's telling you how you're supposed to do this. So we go there, and the financial advisor who's telling us that says, write down what's your regular income coming in. And I was like, what regular income coming in? That was the name of the course, was how to budget your money on a fluctuating income.
Right.
So if you didn't have it, if you had regular money coming in, you wouldn't need to be in this course, So I was like, what is she talking about? And everybody around the table was saying, what are you talking about? What we all have fluctuating income. And she said, you have to have some money coming in, from somewhere. And there were some older actors there who, had retirement money coming in, or, what is it?
401k?
No, from the government.
Social Security.
Yeah, Social Security. Yeah, you see how much I depend on that. Social Security or whatever, but most of the people who were younger, didn't have anything like that. Or, there were some women there, and, they had children, and they were asking if they had alimony, or anything like that. I didn't have any of those things. And I was like, well, what is this that she's, how do I do that? How do I create that? Now, at the time I had a house that I had purchased, and it was in Tennessee, but at that time it wasn't really generating as much income, as I would need it to make in order to make a big difference, because I only had one house, at the time, and it was a single family property, and I had maybe purchased it maybe about 5 years ago. So it wasn't making that much money for me. But that's what made me decide. It was like, I need to have more of this so that I can have some steady streams of income that's passive. And I never felt comfortable or confident doing stocks. So I was like, people always need a place to live. They're not making any more land. Let me start with that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you did Airbnb?
Yep.
Wow. So, I mean, the reason why I think this is so important, because as artists, we think that, the only thing we could do to pay our rent is our art. And wouldn't that be wonderful? But that's not how it always is. And so you have to be like Mom and Kim and be resourceful. But you told me something about the pandemic, and you said during the pandemic, you had a revelation about working, that you had been running your Airbnb, you had been doing your rental properties, you had been substitute teaching, even your management company, working with a choir, teaching piano, was it, or voice you were teaching at the school?
Yeah, I was the accompanist for a choir.
Yes, she was doing all of that, like all of that. And you said that your revelation was that you could do less and still have the income you wanted.
I did. And, I had a friend who said that to me, because I was complaining it was taking me so long. One of those places where I was teaching was in Brooklyn once a week on Saturdays. And then where I was accompanying for the choir, that was in New Jersey on Thursdays. So, 2 days out of the week, you're doing something and it's still artistically related and everything, but it was taking a lot out of me emotionally at the choral situation. And then with the place in Brooklyn, I live in New Jersey, and to get to Brooklyn, in that part of Brooklyn, it took me 2 hours to get there on a good day, and it took me 2 hours to get back. That's 4 hours on a Saturday. And I did that I think I did it for like 4 years, but when I first got it, a friend of mine said, that's too much, it's like, that's taking too much time. And I was like, well, they pay me well, and they did. But I realized during the pandemic, like you said, it's like I had decided, thankfully, before the pandemic, that I was going to let the project go in Brooklyn. For that reason, it took too much. And then when I couldn't teach the choir, because of the pandemic, I realized it didn't make that much of a difference in my budget, because I spent a lot of time with gas and tolls and time and, parking and, all these other things. And by the time I spent all of that money, I really wasn't getting as much back out of it as I thought I was. And letting those things go absolutely made not one difference negatively in my budget. I actually rather came out on the positive end because I wasn't expending so much financially and time-wise.
Yeah. So we have to work smart.
Smarter, not harder. And I was like, what? When I looked at my monthly budget, I was like, seriously? I came out ahead, for the entire year.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that.
And she's also a worship leader.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel that the things you do as side hustles, as extra streams of income, do you feel that they take away from Kimberly, the performer?
That's a good question. And I can understand how it can. It definitely can. And that was one of my reasons for choosing the kinds of things that I chose, because real estate, I wanted it to be passive so that it didn't interfere with my day-to-day auditions and rehearsals and, preparation and all that good stuff, in theory. Okay. When it came to playing piano for the choir, that's still artistic. When this came to teaching voice in Brooklyn, that's still artistic. So in theory, that was, still because it was artistic and, putting it out there to the next generation, I still felt like that was something that was still part of my artistic journey. Now, when it comes to the things that start to take up time, when, you get a phone call at 10 o'clock at night on a Friday night and find out that, your tenants blew up the house and the whole right side of the house is gone, and then you got to call the Red Cross, and then you got to try to, call the fire department, you got to call the insurance company, all these kind of things. Then they start to encroach on your time. And then, of course, that's as my grandmother used to say, that's the screaming baby. And, you got to take care of that. And then, if somebody's asking you to come in for an audition, then, you got to find some place for your tenants to stay, because the house is destroyed, then that's a whole different.
That's not passive.
No, that's not passive. That's definitely, active. So, but those kind of things don't happen all the time, of course, but when something like that does happen and it winds up being a big project, time consuming, that does take time out.
Yeah. What about, you are an investor in Broadway shows, in theater?
Yep.
Now, how'd you get into investing in Broadway shows? Because you said I'm not into stocks,
No.
but investing in theater,
Yes.
that feels like something you know something about, or that you don't feel like it's as risky.
Well, my very first project in New York, pretty much right out of school when I got to Manhattan. I went to school at Juilliard, but then I went to Tennessee. That's how I got my equity card in Nashville, working for the Tennessee rep. And so once I got finished with that, I came back to New York. And then my first job in New York was the workshop of Smokey Joe's Cafe. And when I was doing that show, the contract that we signed said that everybody in the cast, and there was a 7-person cast, which is a small Broadway cast, as we know, we had to split 1%. So each one of us got 1/7 of 1%. That was our part of being in the workshop. None of us who were in the workshop originated the show that everybody knows today. But because we had done the workshop, we were the ones who got the percentage point. Unfortunately, not the original cast, but they got the privilege of being able to do the show and getting the nominations and, those kind of things. So there was the balance there. And at the time, because that was my first doing that, I wanted to be able to do the show, and because I didn't get to do that, I was disappointed, at first. But then once the show got up and running, and then it got, the noms, and the show did the Broadway company and the tour and the London company, and I think it was Japan. So there's like 4 companies
still, and it's still going.
Absolutely, and
you're still getting that 1%?
I did up until 17 years, up 17 years. And I did not realize what a blessing that was until the show started going, and we got our 1/7 of 1 percentage point for each company. So there were times, at one point in time, at the end of my and this was when people were doing more, the pay stubs and not your, direct deposits. So, but I had a stack that was like that big of pay stubs from
a show you weren't in,
from a show I was not in, and I was continuing to receive, the weekly paychecks, the 6-week turnarounds from each company. And I was like, shoot, it's like, well, that's the side I need to be on. And that was 1/7 of 1%. And there's still another 6/7 of that 1%. And then there's another 99% spread out among all these other people. And I was like, well, shoot, to this day, I still call the house I live in the house that Smokey Joe's built, because, it was substantial.
Yeah.
And that was 1/7 of 1%. And I was like, well, how do I get on the other side of the table? Because that was certainly way more money than I would have made if I were actually on stage. And I need to figure out how
17 years, you wouldn't have been on stage 17 years.
No, they would have long since, replaced me. But that stack was from 1 year now.
Wow.
That stack like that was from 1 year. And I started putting my feelers out there and asking people, and that length of time, it was very much, a boys club. And I didn't see too many people of color either. And so it was a challenge, to try to figure out who would let me in. I would tell people that I was interested, and they would say, "Oh, that's nice." I would try to, get projects, and say, "Hey, I would like to see if I can, do something with this, and take it to an attorney to see if I can get the rights, and they'll say, "What do you want to do with this?" And I was like, I think I want to be, this is a good part for me. It was written for me. And, I would like to be able to try to see if we can, produce this. That's a vanity project. And I was like, Okay. So it wasn't until, Lin-Manuel was able to do that, and even now, I can think of one person, um, uh, and she's doing Little Girl Blue, and about Nina Simone, and I'm excited to, been able to participate in that project as well.
As an investor.
Yes, but good for her, that she wrote the piece and she's starring in the piece, and she's participating, as financially in the piece, but
and that's not a vanity project. That's business.
That's business. Okay. Business. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. And I've never understood that, why there's been such a overt attempt to keep actors out of in the investment part of it, because that only makes the actors
incentive.
It gives them incentive to make sure that show is successful. We always want to do that because we have pride in our work, but when you also have financial stake in it, that takes it to another level, and the only thing I could think of, was just, greed, that you didn't want to share,
Wow.
because, you're just making money off of people who are not able to participate. And that didn't make sense to me. It still doesn't make sense to me,
Wow. Now, do you think it's not wanting to share the money or the power?
Oh, both. Definitely both. Yeah. I mean, my good friend, E. Clay Cornelius, he's the one who,
Hey, E. Clay.
Hey, E. Clay. I always give him a shout out every time, because, as a man, he was able to get his foot in the door. He still had a lot of difficulty because he's an actor still, and also, a person of color, and he jumped through a lot of hoops and, had some severe disappointments himself, in his efforts to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
But once he did, did what we always hope people will do, is leave the door open.
He did.
He did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so he's just been, a really great friend and resource and, source of inspiration, because he just, anybody that he can help, to be able to have actors be able to go on the other side of the table if they want to, he's just been real good about that, and I want to, do the same. Anybody who wants to do it, you should be able to.
Wow.
So yeah, I do, I've been able to bring a couple of people in,
I know you always call me. I dropped the ball. I was like, oh yeah, Kimberly called me about that.
Anytime you're ready, sis.
You always do. You always do. So what are some projects you are investing in, have your hand in right now? Chicken and Biscuits.
Oh, right? Yep. Chicken and Biscuits, which Clay was one of the lead producers on that. So I was really proud of him for that, right out of the as soon as everything opened up after the pandemic,
right out of the shutdown.
That was very bold, and he took a huge step, and it was very well received.
It did well.
Yeah, Douglas Lyons, was the writer, and
congratulations,
absolutely,
you did it.
Absolutely,
an amazing job.
Yep, and the cast, everybody. It was a lot of fun, and people needed to laugh, during that time. So it was very well received, so I was excited to be a part of that. I was also part of it when it was at the Queen's Theater just before that, and that was their off-Broadway presentation, and it opened on March 9th, and the shutdown happened I think the 12th or the 13th, so.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it's like we kept going with it each time, and they still and still they rose.
Yes, they did.
So
yes, they did.
And that worked out, to be able to do that. And MJ. And so I'm excited about that.
MJ, the musical?
Yes.
That's getting raves. You're invested in that?
Yes.
She gonna be rich, y'all.
Let's see what house this gonna buy.
Oh my goodness.
I am excited because when I saw that show, y'all, the kids are turning it out.
So let me ask you this. Before you invest, have you seen the show? Or do you just have a gut? It's like anything else you invest in.
Sometimes it depends on what's available. Sometimes, if it's a play, obviously the script is there. I read the script, like that's what happened with American Son. There wasn't anything, they didn't have anything. It had been done regionally, but they hadn't recorded anything. So I just had to read the script, and it clutched me, when I got to the end and I went, at the end, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, this one's good, or sometimes they have done some regional theater productions, and they have recorded some things, and they might have audio from the music. That's what happened with Hadestown. We didn't have anything to see, but
you invested in Hadestown?
Yes, ma'am. The Broadway show and the tour. So I'm excited about that one.
Hadestown is still running.
Absolutely. Yes. And that's what happened now with
I might need to get a loan.
Yeah. And with Ain't Too Proud, they were still accepting funds when they were on their out of New York tour. And we went down to DC to see that production at the Kennedy Center. So that we got to see that one, in its full entirety, before. So that was a blessing, because that's unusual, very unusual.
Also, you're in development for new projects, because I know you're working with Stanley Wayne, our good friend Stanley Wayne Mathis, on his play. And you're in that one as well, right?
Yes. That was my goal, or my primary goal. It's like I wanted to be in projects, that I can be on both sides of the table. Sometimes, you know how it is, sometimes you're doing a show and you just can really see, because you're walking through the arc of your character and in the world, and you're like, sometimes you need to step back and some people can look at it and see. And then sometimes when you're in it, you're like, this is what needs to happen, with this particular, piece. But nobody asks your opinion as an actor. And the first time I walked into a project, I was the co-producer on When It Happens to You. It was an off-Broadway piece at the Beacon. No, the Beaks downtown. And I went to the final dress before they were moving to the theater. And I hadn't been around. I hadn't done anything, with the piece, as far as like being involved. And so nobody knew anything. But when I came to the rehearsal, they're like, who is this? And they said, oh, she's she's a co-producer, one of the investors. And they're like, oh, okay. So I sit down and I watch, the run through, and never had anybody ever said, so what did you think? And the director turns to me and says, what do you think? And I'm like, me?
You're talking to me?
You talking to me? Yeah.
Yes.
And I had thoughts, as an actor, I had plenty of thoughts.
We do have thoughts, but you're right.
And I didn't necessarily feel completely comfortable to be able to be totally transparent about my thoughts right at that moment to her, because we had just met. But with the people, and again, it was Clay, and so we went to lunch afterwards, and I said, this is the honest truth about what I think about this piece and what I think needs to be adjusted with that, and but that was the first time ever anybody had asked me what I thought. I'm used to being an actor and it being told,
this is what I think about your work. Exactly. About what you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's empowering.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank
sister.
you.
Wow. I'm so proud of you.
Aww.
So proud of you for doing that. So before you go, I have to talk about ECM.
Oh, okay.
So one of the other things Kimberly has done is start her own management company. Um, Entertainment creative management. She started it when she felt frustrated with her own representation. And now she manages the Broadway Inspirational Voices. She is a manager herself. So tell us about ECM.
As always, necessity is the mother of invention. And, like you said, I was frustrated with my previous representation, but I also know enough to know that you can't just walk in there and say, only a fool represents himself in court, in the same way. You can't walk in there and say, I'm my own manager. And so I talked to my friend Ernest, and I said, hey, and he's an exceptional business person, and we're business partners.
Hey, Ern.
Hey, Ern. He's an exceptional business person, and we also own property together as well. And he's a realtor as well. And he's entrepreneurial minded as well. And I said, hey, look, this is something that I know about in this industry, but I need someone to create a company so that for logistical reasons, it needs not to be me. Okay. And so I said, would you be the face, the front, the owner, the primary owner of the company? And he goes, yes, sure. And so we went to a law firm, established, an S Corp, and it became Entertainment Creative Management. Ernest's initials are ECM, and that's, he wanted to have something that was representative of his initials, and therefore it became Entertainment Creative Management. So that's how
I didn't know that part.
Oh yeah. So that's how that got started, but how looking for clients and this, that, and the other. And I've been a longtime member of Broadway Inspirational Voices, and Michael McElroy and I were doing a gig in Vegas, and it had just become Broadway Inspirational Voices as opposed to the Broadway Gospel Choir. And Michael was like, we need representation, and I was like, okay. I said, so what's the problem? And he goes, I want somebody that I can trust. And I was like, if you trust me, which he did, and that was
oh wow,
20 years ago. Yeah.
And you still manage the choir, and you manage other bands, you manage your family band. But here's the thing that I love about it. When Michael had a need, you had already started the company. So you couldn't have been sitting there going, well, I was thinking about starting a management company. No, you had an S Corp. You had a person running the company. You had already started the company. So when the need came, you could walk right in that door when it opened. So it's one thing to be praying for open doors.
As the scripture says, about the 10 maids with their oil lamps, you got to be ready. 5 are ready and 5 were not, and the ones that weren't ready, they hustling around trying to get ready, and they got left behind, So I keep that, though, certain things, you keep in the forefront, about what drives you. And those are one of the things that drives me, that story in the Bible, and also one of our mutual really good friends, LaShance, she had a friend who she didn't know, but her husband knew. And so she went out to visit her husband's friend out in Arizona, very accomplished woman. And she wanted to know, she was a doctor, she had a horse farm, she's married, she had grown children, she's an author. And there was like one other thing that, huge things, that she had done. And I remember LaShance asking her, how do you do all of this stuff? Because at the time LaShance had 2 little kids, and newly, widowed, and she was trying to figure out how she was going to do all of this stuff, and the woman said, you can do it all. You just have to do it in chapters. You can't do everything all at once, but you can do it all. You just have to do it all in stages. And so I took that, even though she wasn't talking to me, she was talking to LaShance. But, when LaShance relayed the story to me, I took it to heart, because I was like, there are a lot of things that I want to do, but, instead of trying to do everything and running around trying to do everything at one time, I decided, certain times were going to be stages or chapters for me to do certain things. So.
Beautiful advice.
Hey,
LaShance.
LaShance, thank you. Did you know that you had made that big of an impact with that story? I bet you didn't. And I hope you still remember it, because I do. So.
Yay. Well, you know what? That's a great way to end our time together. You are an inspiration, and your chapters have been inspiring. And I don't even think you're even, a third into the book. So I'm excited to see what God has for you next. But in addition to all of that, she's a beautiful, dynamic performer. So no stone has been left unturned, and I'm excited about the next chapter. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Oh my goodness. Artist Talk in person.
Yes.
Yeah, I hope you were inspired by just the many ways Kimberly has found to be successful in this business of show.
Amen.
See you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
We different in here for a reason. It's hard and sweet. It's hard and sweet.